Good afternoon all. On behalf of IoT Academy, I welcome you all for the first session of national level workshop on research paradigm and hands-on SPSS for beginners. Let me introduce the resource person of today's session, Dr. Samir Dubey. Dr. Samir Dubey is working with Acropolis Institute of Management Studies and Research, Indore, as an associate professor. He is a postgraduate in Commerce and Management from Devi Ahilya Vishwavidyalaya, Indore. He is having 17 years of academic and 4 years of corporate experience. He has worked for Earthman Politics Limited, Indore Institute of Management and Research, and IPS Academy, Indore. At present, he is having more than 30 national and international publications in research journals and conference proceedings. Dr. Dubey has also co-authored a book named Banking Law and Practice in India. Dr. Dubey is a member of Madhya Pradesh Economic Association and Research Foundation of India. He has also been invited as a speaker by UGC Human Resource Development Center for delivering sessions on ICT tools and research methodology. With this, I hand over the session to Dr. Shamir. So please.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
You're welcome, sir.
I'm sharing my PowerPoint presentation to start with the session. I believe it is visible.
So it is not visible, sir.
It is not yet. Just a second.
Now it is visible, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
You're welcome, sir.
So first of all, I'm thankful to ma'am for giving such a nice introduction and starting the session. On this 5 days national level workshop on research paradigm and hands-on SPSS for beginners, today we are going to start off with basics of research. So we shall be discussing a little bit about the research, and I believe since it is the day one, we shall be taking some 2-4 minutes extra. So if the participants are please a little bit prepared, please keep yourself a little bit prepared, so that we might have to wait or we'll leave the session some 5-10 more minutes. Okay, so let us start off with this. First of all, let us discuss about the meaning of research. As of I believe that maximum the number of people who are in the session. How many of you, as the session is for beginners, so how many of you are registered under the PhD? If you can please write down something in the chat box. Some people have, with the only opening of the session, some people have raised their hands. There are certain queries right now. No, I think it is out of mistake. So, okay. If I can know how many of you are already have completed your PhD? Anybody? Please reply in the chat. Enrolled in PhD. Okay. Okay. So we have people who have enrolled in PhD, registered PhD students. Okay, you have got registered PhD students under the University of Mumbai, then enrolled in PhD. Okay. Dr. Rishi has completed his PhD. Okay. Joined in PhD, Anna University. Very nice. Doing PhD from Mumbai University. Okay, good. Very nice. Okay, so we have all the type of people. Definitely I believe that the session is definitely going to be a little bit challenging, but let us start off now. So in front of you, I believe you people can see there are three different situations. So with the starting of our research, let us first understand what exactly is the meaning of research. So I believe everybody can see there are three different situations. In the first situation, there is a person who has prepared a paper on computer usage in secondary schools. After reviewing literature on the subject available in his university library, in the second session, the person has researched and completed a document which gives information about the age or the details of his or her, like the parents' income about their students. Then distance from the school, from the district office, then participated in a workshop on curriculum development and prepared what he calls a report on the curriculum of our engineer. I shall be thankful if somebody can please reply me in your opinion, what do you think, which one do you think is a research out of these three situations? Situation number 1, situation number 2, or situation number 3? If somebody can reply me in the chat box. Situation number 1, okay. Okay, not too many replies. Okay, let us see. 1 and 2, okay, good. Situation number 1 and 2. So the prepared a paper on computer usage and research and completed a document which gives information about the details of students. Okay, you think that these two are basically the research. Okay, so let me tell you something, that none of these is a research. All these three situations are not a research. In the very first situation, what happens is the computer usage in secondary schools and the literature has been reviewed, whatever is available in his library, in his university library, and no other sources have been searched for. So that's why this is once again is not a research paper. The second is not a research. Yes, is not a research. The second one is research and completed document. So this only has a description. However, no results can be drawn out of this detailed list. So that's why once again this is compilation of the information and not a research. And in the third one, the participated in a workshop. So just a report on the workshop has been prepared. So in all the three situations, none of them will be a research. Now let us understand what exactly is the what exactly is the research. So there are different types of research that we generally used to see. Research basically means there is like it is a voyage. The research basically, it is known as a movement from the known to unknown. That is what is known as research. So whenever you are moving towards something unknown, that we used to call a research. Whenever we add something to the body of knowledge, that is what we call is a research in our in our context. So now there are what are different types of researches available. So there are different types of research. The first one is descriptive and analytical research. In descriptive research, whatever research is only whatever we use to observe, we use to describe it only. Whatever we use to observe, we use to describe it. That is what is known as descriptive research. So whenever somebody is only describing about the changes in the share market, whenever somebody is describing about the whether what exactly is the pace or what exactly is the speed of a specific reaction, When somebody is describing about a phenomena, that is what is known as a descriptive research. On the contrary, it will be an analytical research if you draw certain results out of it, or you analyze something out of the very same thing. That we used to call an analytical research. Then there comes applied research and fundamental research. The fundamental research is kind of the concept development research, or some concept is being developed, that is known as a fundamental research, which is basically a concept which is developed. There are chances that nobody would have done any kind of practicals out of it. Actual implementation may not have done, but it is only a concept. So that is what is known as a fundamental research, and applied research is the application of that concept, whatever concept has been developed. So the applied research used to have certain kind of like controlled, uncontrolled or dependent, independent variables. There are certain kind of definitely controlled variables. There are different kind of there are different kind of situations. There will be different set of there will be different set of the situations which shall be governing that specific type of research. Okay, so that is an applied research. Then there comes quantitative and qualitative research. One thing which I would like to say is that all these types of researches, there can be a research which is applied and descriptive. There can be a research like fundamental and quantitative. There can be research like analytical and qualitative. So these are not, there is no watertight these are not watertight differentiations between what exactly is the meaning of research or what exactly is the type of research. There can be interchanges, there can be interlinkages between these different types of researches. So quantitative research and qualitative research. The qualitative research is the one which in which generally we ask the respondents. Qualitative research is something which is based on the experience of people, where the people are sharing about the quality of their life, the quality of their experience. So where people are sharing about their experience, about their emotions, that kind of research is known as a qualitative research. However, in the quantitative research, people used to, or the researcher used to collect information in quantity. In quantity means like if there is, if we are talking about mainly, we talk about the financial researches under quantitative research, where we used to research on like the share market, the share prices, and all these things. So these are quantitative research, where we used to look after, where we used to analyze where we used to see all the quantity. Then there are other types of researches as well, like there is one-time research and longitudinal research. One-time research is generally the research which is conducted for a single time only, and longitudinal research is the research which is conducted for a longer time duration. That is longitudinal research. Then field research and laboratory or simulation research. So the field research is in which we used to conduct the surveys and we collect information, we collect data. That is known as field research. And laboratory research, in which where we do have certain restricted environment. The independent and dependent variables, there are two different types of variables. We shall be discussing about them later on. But there are two different types of variables: independent variable and dependent variable. Independent variable used to affect the dependent variable, the other set of variables, that is known as dependent variable. So the laboratory, or in case of the laboratory research or the simulation research, what happens is the researcher used to control the independent variables, and then the effect on the dependent variables are being recorded, and then that effect is being analyzed and the results are drawn out of it. Then exploratory and historical research. Exploratory research are something in which we generally used to explore something new. That is known as an exploratory research. And in historical research, what happens is we used to look after the historical records. We used to see historical records, and all those historical records are being looked after. Something new is being found out. We utilize historical sources like documents and means the historical documents. So the historical documents then remains. Then we study the events, we study the ideas of past, we study, in these studies we used to include the philosophies of different different groups at any remote point of time. So that is not actually might be happening, but it is basically something which has already happened in the past. We also call it a conclusion oriented and decision oriented or conclusion oriented research. So when we are doing conclusion oriented research, a researcher is generally free to pick up the problems. That kind of research is is historical research. Just a second. Okay. So historical research. So these are different types of research. Then we come to the characteristics of a good research. When we call a research a good research, so there are different characteristics of a good research. The very first one is the good research is systematic. Systematic means generally what happens is that the research used to follow a specific path. What exactly is the process of research that we are going to discuss, and we shall have a different we shall be discussing about it in the later slide. So the criteria of a good research is, the first one is it is systematic. It means that the research is structured with specified steps. As I told you that it is that there is a specific process to conduct the research. Then the process is to be conducted in a specified sequence in accordance with a well-defined set of rules and regulations. Systematic characteristics of the research does not rule out the creative thinking, but it is certainly does reject the use of, you can say, guessing or just vague type of ideas for arriving at the conclusion. So that kind of research, that is a good research which is systematic. Then a good research is logical. This implies basically it implies that the research is guided by the rules of logical reasoning. The research must be logical. Like a logical process of induction and deduction are of great value in carrying out the research. So so these two kind of things are basically used, induction and deduction. Induction is the process of reasoning from a part to the whole, whereas deduction, on the contrary, deduction is the process of reasoning from some premises to conclusion. Okay, which actually follows that original premise. So that is what is known as deductive research. So the good research is logical. Either it would be inductive or it would be deductive. So the logical reasoning basically it makes the research more meaningful in context of decision making also. So whenever there is decision making, we generally used to have one of these kinds of researches. Then there comes the research is empirical. It must be empirical. Empirical means that research is related basically to the aspects of real situation and deal with the concrete data that provides a basis for validity of the research results. So whatever we have research, that must be validated, that can be validated. Until and unless it is validated, it cannot be termed as a good research. So a good research is empirical, something which can be experienced later on, or something out of the research is based on some or other kind of experiences. So a good research is empirical. Then there comes a good research is replicable in nature. So replicable in nature means the characteristics allows the research results to be verified. Whenever we need to verify whether the research is like relevant in the current scenario or not. So the very same research can be replicated. So replicating the study and thereby then once again building a sound basis for decisions. So whether the study still can be a good basis for making decisions or not. These kind of things are known as whether the study is replicable or not. Then a good research is which can accept critical assumptions. So the critical assumptions need to be assumed. There are definitely in almost all types of research there are certain critical assumptions, like there are certain limitations. So the research must accept the limitations. It may be possible that every research may not be applicable in all kinds of situations. So wherever there are limitations, we used to call it that a good research is one which accepts critical assumptions or the premise. So these are the characteristics of a good research. Then let us continue with the research process. So the research process has been divided, as you can see. The research process is being divided into 7 different parts. However, in some of the books or some of the authors have divided it into something 9 or 10 different parts as well. But the overall the research process shall remain same. So whenever you refer the book, I believe that while referring the book, you might find that the very same research process is being in some of the books it has been concise, and something only some 5 and 6 different steps have been elaborated, and in some of the books somewhere around 9 and 10 different steps have been elaborated. So I have taken the most acceptable 7-step process. So now let us start up with the process. The very first one is research problem. So the first one is define research problem, then review the concepts and theories, or review the previous research findings. We call it review the literature. Then we formulate our own thinking, our own thought about the outcomes of the research. We call it hypothesis formulation. Then we design the research. What sample we are going to take, how we are going to conduct the research, we call it research design. Then we collect the data, that is we actually implement the research, and then whatever data we collect, we use to analyze the data. We analyze the data and interpret whatever we find from the data, and then we prepare a report, we draw some conclusions, we prepare a report, and then this report may become base for someone else to once again define the research problem. So this is how the research process used to work. Let us start off with defining the research problem. So the research problem, from where the research problem used to arise. So we have divided it into 3 different parts. There could be some different parts as well, or some more sources for research problems can also be found. The very first one is professional experience. The person, the researcher who is doing some kind of research, there are chances that he or she is already working in some kind of, is a professional, and they are already working on some topic, or they are already having their professional experience, like doctors, the MBBS doctors, then there are psychologists, or they are psychiatrists, so they are already working, they are already in their they are already having their professional experience. Teachers, they are having their professional experience, and now if they are taking out some kind of problem from their professional experience, so the professional experience generally used to become the source for searching research problem. Then there could be certain burning issues in an international situation. In the international scenario right now, it is also having some very burning issues, some burning questions. So those questions can also be taken care of. Then there comes literature. We need to study something about the research problem, about the research, not exactly about the research problem, but about the subject. So if somebody is from the management, he or she would be going through the literature, available literature on the management, maybe on human resources, maybe on finance, maybe on banking, maybe something about the consumer behavior also. So these kind of different literature, some or the other person is definitely going on, and then they used to find out something new. So they want to find out something new. So the literature, available literature, that can also be a base for the research problem. Then professional meetings, whenever there are professional meetings, mean the meetings of the management associations or these kind of bodies. Whenever a person used to visit these kind of bodies, in the meetings as well, a person or a researcher can get the research problem, the person can identify. Then there could be meetings, like there can be industry academia cells, there can be a meeting with the industry professionals, and a research problem can also be picked up from there as well. Then there comes discussion. So discussions with either the peers or with the senior people who are already in the research. A person discussing with them, if somebody is out of ideas, if somebody is unable to understand how to start up from the research, in that case definitely the person can easily approach the senior researchers, the senior professors, and since they are either in touch with they are having some kind of professional experience, they are very much keen about what exactly is going on in the economy, in the national scenario, or at the international scenario. They might be going through the literature for a longer period of time, and once again they might be involved in different kind of professional meetings. So discussions with the people, either with the peers who are involved in either of these activities, or with the senior professors who are involved in these kind of activities, or only out of their age, definitely they are having more experience than the beginners. Hence, discussions with these people also can also be used as a base for finding out the research problem. Then there are the elements of a good title. How to frame a good title? So there are different elements, and there is a comparison made whether it is a good title or a bad title. Once again, this is not an exhaustive list, but definitely this list is based on the topics which have been means the topics which are from different Scopus and ABDC journals, and all those topics have been analyzed upon how or what exactly are the different characteristics of those topics, and on the basis of that, this comparative list has been prepared. So the first element is length. A good title used to have something between 10 to 15 words or 31 to 40. Not exactly. I do not say that you need to too much stick to these kind of things. Like if some word is a longer word and it is having more than some 31 to 40 characters, definitely it can be a part of the title, but the length should be something between 10 to 15 words or so. Longer than 15 words, the title is supposed to be a little bit poor. However, in certain cases, like in abstract researches, in some very if there are certain researchers which are very focused, and in that case specifically the length exceeds, that can also be acceptable. But in general, the maximum length should be something between 10 to 15 words. Then the punctuation like commas, colons, or semicolons can be used. However, definitely question marks and exclamation points should not be used in the research in the title, because in that case definitely it won't be treated as if it is a good title. After all, you are not definitely there is a question, and we are going to find out the problem of that question, but the title should not be a question. It should not look like a question. Then the keywords should be used. Abbreviations should be as far as possible. Abbreviations should be avoided. Jargon should be avoided. Humorous words should be avoided. Then geographical locations. Once again, I would like to remind over here, in case of the researches which are in geography only, in that case definitely geographical locations can be mentioned, subject to the research is based on a specific geographical location, and that can once again be the replication of the research. This needs to be taken. This needs to be kept in mind. Then the grammar and spelling should be correct. For the journal guidelines must be followed. This is one of the most important points, and it should clearly state the point of the article. So these are the characteristics of a good title. Then there comes the review of literature, the second part. In case of review of literature, we have divided literature into three different parts: primary literature, secondary literature, and tertiary literature. Primary literature is the results of immediate research activity have just been conducted in a very short period of time, just like a week ago or month ago. Or since in case of management researches, definitely if you are conducting if a research has been conducted in a time duration like say an year or so, it can also be treated as the immediate results of the research. Immediate research can be treated. Then it also includes the analysis of data collected in the field or in laboratory, which has not yet been published. So the primary literature is the raw data. The examples are also there, like there are dissertations, there are technical reports, there are original research which are still unpublished or published in peer-reviewed or in very high index journals. Then these kind of literature can be known as a primary literature. Then secondary literature is, there are different books, there are review articles. People have already reviewed certain research articles, and now those reviews are available to us. So the literature review articles are available, then books which are available. But the most information, the most part of the information in the secondary literature generally used to come from is the part of secondary literature, because it is already being published. So the secondary literature basically it summarizes and synthesizes the primary literature. So that is secondary literature available. And tertiary literature, as far as possible, we should avoid. However, tertiary literature can be used for preparation of theories or so. So The tertiary literature used to include summaries or condensed versions of materials, usually with reference to the primary and secondary sources also. Then it is a good place to look up facts for a general overview of a subject. So the tertiary literature is basically used for general overview of the subject rather than anything else. One thing definitely we are here I would like to suggest everybody is that we use whenever we look after or whenever we want to find out something new on a topic. What happens is we first go to the Google and write it and just Google it and try to find it out, and the very first thing that arrives is Wikipedia. So Wikipedia should be avoided as much as possible during the referencing, but definitely Wikipedia can be used while you are making the references. Like in Wikipedia also, those who have gone through Wikipedia, you people would have noticed that the same thing, the information in Wikipedia has been divided into two different parts. The upper part or the very first few paragraphs, they generally used to conduct, they generally contain details about the specific phenomena or person or whatever it is, and on the lower part you will find the references. So we can use those references to study and to gain information and knowledge about that whatever topic we are discussing. So there are three different types of literature: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Then there comes formulation of hypothesis. Now, since you have already discussed, now you have a glimpse of, or now you already have a research problem, you have already discussed about, you have already gone through the available literature about the problem. Now it is the time when you make your own thought about the research problem, about the result of the research problem, and that is what is known as a hypothesis. So the hypothesis, what it should always be. So the hypothesis, like, it should explain what you expect to happen. It is about what are your thoughts. It should be clear and understandable. It should be testable. And if until and unless an hypothesis is testable, it is that cannot be an hypothesis. Then it should be measurable as well, and it contains an independent and dependent variable. In general, we used to make a hypothesis, or the hypothesis used to contain dependent independent variable and a relationship between these two. How the independent variable is going to affect the dependent variable, or how an independent variable is going to affect two different dependent variables. Those have to be included in the hypothesis. Then preparation of research design. Your hypothesis is ready. Now we used to prepare the research design. So there are three different types of research designs. The first one is exploratory research design. The second one is descriptive or diagnostic design. And the third one is experimental or hypothesis testing design. So there are three different designs available, or we have listed these three different designs. So in case of exploratory research studies, basically they are also termed as formulative research studies type of things, and the main purpose of these studies is that of formulating a problem. So the exploratory research studies are basically the research design are basically a research design in which we use to formulate the research problem. One thing. Second thing, exploratory research design is where you are finding something which is abstract. So in case of exploratory research design, what happens is we need to have most diversified. We need to have most most diversified research tools can be used. The person or the researcher has to be open to use different types of tools, different types of techniques. You cannot specify a specific technique. In exploratory researches, what happens is, in exploratory researches, you are working on a specific idea, and once you have gone through that idea, now you come to know that something new is going to happen, or you find out something new. Suppose you are taking an interview of some person. Interview definitely is one of the tools for researchers. Is one of the tools for collecting data. So collection of data might lead you to take interview, or that interview might lead you to collect certain kind of secondary data as well, to verify whatever the person or to verify whatever is being said in that specific interview. So exploratory, in case of exploratory research design, what happens is we have most diversified tools. We generally do not specify that we shall use only these specific tools, but the research design, in research design, the statements that we use to make for preparation of research, or the tools or techniques that are used, we use generalized statements depending upon the data collected, depending upon the review of literature. We shall use different tools. So what tools we use, generally we do not specify the tools. Then descriptive and diagnostic research design. In descriptive and diagnostic research design, what happens is, like as I told you earlier, descriptive research studies are those studies which are more concerned about describing the characteristics of a particular individual or a group of individuals. So the diagnostic research studies used to determine the frequency with which something is occurring, or some association where there is an association between two different variables, or there is an association between one thing to something else. So the studies concerning whether certain variables are associated, those are basically the examples of diagnostic research studies. So as against this, the study is concerned with specific prediction with narration of facts and characteristics concerning individuals, or definitely group of individuals or a situation. That is we used to call descriptive research study. Then most of the social research, it actually comes under the category of descriptive research only. Then there comes the diagnostic studies. And the diagnostic studies, what happens is we have whereas in descriptive studies we use structured instruments. In diagnostic studies we do not do that. Okay, so diagnostic studies are something like you are diagnosing that it is basically the result oriented studies. You are trying to find out something new. You are trying to find out the reason for a phenomena that has happened. You are trying to find out a specific kind of behavior of a person. So those kind of studies are known as the diagnostic studies. Then we have experimental or hypothesis testing design. So in case of hypothesis testing research designs, these are also known as experimental studies, as is clear. And these are basically where the researcher used to test the hypothesis, that is, whether there is a cause and effect relationship between two different variables. We used to call it a causal relationship, cause and effect. So whether there is a cause and effect relationship between two different variables or two different set of variables, that is known as hypothesis testing research studies. These kind of research designs also require some specific procedures. So that, because what happens is, when you are already making your own mind, when you are making your own statement, when that we used to call a hypothesis, what happens is there are chances that some kind of biasness used to come within the researcher. And this hypothesis testing research studies generally are designed in such a way, or these designs are being prepared in such a way that to reduce those kind of biases. Okay, so these are the hypothesis testing designs, in which generally, like in experimental as well, there are different variables, controlled and uncontrolled, both kind of variables. As I told you earlier, dependent and independent variables, both are being used in experimental design and hypothesis testing design. Then there comes determination of sample design. We have already framed our the research, and now the sample design is also a part of the research design. So we have two different types of sample designs: probabilistic sampling and non-probabilistic sampling. The probabilistic sampling design is like, there are simple random sampling and there are complex random sampling. We require some more time to elaborate them in detail, but probabilistic sampling design is a simple, like in simple random sampling, what happens is, all the units of the universe is where we are going to do the research. In whatever the units are being included, that is known as the universe for the researcher, and the researcher used to pick up samples from this universe. The researcher actually works on these samples only, and these samples, since we believe that these samples are identical, the samples must be identical to the overall universe. So this is the reason why we feel, why we believe that whatever the sample is behaving, the very same thing, the very same behavior shall be depicted by the whole universe. So whatever person, any person from any of the or any of the unit from any part of the universe, when it is picked up, it is known as simple random sampling. When all the sampling units, when all the units of in a universe have an equal opportunity and equal chance to get selected, it is known as probabilistic sampling. And simple random sampling is where all have the equal opportunity. Then complex random sampling is where there are different, like this, the units definitely are having equal opportunity of getting selected, but then there are different kind of sections, there are different kind of partitions among the samples. That is either known as systematic sampling or some kind of stratified sampling. Some different stratas are being made, and some different kind of clusters are being area sampling, which is based on the geographical location of the samples. Then there are multi-stage sampling, in which the sampling this sampling design used to vary from one stage to another stage. So these are different types of probabilistic sampling, but definitely all the specific units in a universe, whether they are partitioned, whether they are in different clusters, whether they are in different groups or subgroups, in that group or in that specific subgroup, the probability of their selection is equal. Then there comes non-probabilistic sampling design, in which the first one is the convenience sampling. It is totally dependent upon the convenience of the researcher. Then judgment sampling is completely dependent upon the judgment of the judgment of the researcher, that which sample is clear, or which sample is like it represents, or which sample should I collect, or which the sample which represents the universe. So it is on the judgment of the researcher. Then there comes quota sampling, in which there are specified quota for to be collected from different areas, from different clusters, or from different geographical locations. So this is known as quota sampling. Then there comes snowball sampling, where the first sampling unit used to tell us about the next sampling unit, and we collect the samples and we collect the information from these people with the help of reference. So this is what is known as snowball sampling. Then there comes the actual implementation or execution of the project, where we used to collect the data. We used to administer the project. So data are of two different types: primary data and secondary data. The primary data can be collected with the help of interview, with the help of questionnaire, with the help of schedule, or with the help of observation. Observation is supposed to be the best technique, but scientific the scientific proofs, or it is very difficult to prove that the observation has been made and proper results have been drawn based on the observations. Hence people generally do not use observation. But observation, if the data is being collected with complete honesty and unbiasedness, definitely observation is one of the best techniques for collection of data. Then there comes interview. It can be audio interview, it can be a video interview, it can be a multimedia interview. Then there comes questionnaire, which is most commonly used for collection of data. It can be an online questionnaire, it can be an offline questionnaire. There are schedules as well, and the only difference between questionnaire and schedule is that schedule is being filled up by the researcher or the executive, the research executive himself, and the question are being asked from the respondent. This happens when generally people are either unable to write down their views, they are unable to write down anything, or they are not willing to write down anything. In that case, the researcher or the executive of the researcher, they ask questions and fill up the questionnaire by themselves. That is what is known as questions or schedule. Otherwise, it is very much equal to questionnaire. The secondary data is being collected different from different sources, like reports, the reports of already printed reports of different organizations, companies, professional bodies. They used to form the base for collection of secondary data. There are different records. There are different websites which generally list different kinds of data, tables of different types. Then there are published researches. So you can use the data from different published researches as well, and you can use that data in your own research. So these are the collection of data. Once the data is being collected, the project has been executed. There comes analysis of data. So analysis of data, it includes editing, refining, coding, classification, tabulation. So we are only analyzing the data, what the data is, how we have got the data, what is the quality of data, okay, how to improve, how the quality of data can be improved so that we can get better results. This is what is known as analysis of the data. So in analysis of the data, the very first thing that we come across is editing or refining the data. So editing of the data is basically, we generally use to examine the collected data which is still in the raw form. Then we use to detect certain kind of errors, some kind of omissions. There are chances that certain kind of omissions would be there. Then we correct these omissions wherever it is possible. It may also happen that it is not possible for the researcher to omit or to correct each and every mistake or each and every error. But as far as possible, we should try to correct the error. Then editing also involves the scrutiny of the questionnaire. So first we need to scrutinize the completed questionnaires, the schedules. Then editing can be done, a little bit editing can be done where the data are inaccurate, or if the data is a little bit inconsistent with the other facts gathered, or if the data is somewhat consistent, the consistency can be checked. Then uniformity, the data should be uniformly entered in either in SPSS or in Excel, or in whatever way we want to enter the data, or in whatever software we are using. Then apart from this, whether the data is complete or not, whether all the observations have been properly recorded or not. So editing is being done. So the editing, after editing and refining, we used to go for coding, where coding actually is the process in which we used to assign numerals or any other kind of symbol or to the answers, which generally are being collected from with the help of the questionnaire. And so this is basically known as coding. That coding can also be done either in SPSS or in Excel. Then there comes classification of data. In classification, what happens is we get large volume of raw data. Like we have 500, 600, 700 questionnaires. So what we do is we make different homogeneous groups. At present, earlier there were the people were using statistical methods or like the tally marks and all those things. But now we are advanced. We have advanced techniques, like we have Excel, we have SPSS. Now we have all these different things. Apart from this, there are certain different softwares are also available. Data science used to play a very important role in collection of the data, specifically in classification of the data, because earlier the videos or the audio records was difficult to classify or collect the data or extract data from the audio and video records. But now, with the help of data science, with the help of artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques, it is not that much difficult to extract data from audio or video records. Then after classification of the data, we use to tabulate it. We make different tables, and actually the data means it is necessary for the researcher to arrange the data in some kind of concise logical order, and that concise logical order is known as tabulation. Okay, so definitely we used to arrange the data in different rows and columns. We used to call it a table, and it can be done. Earlier, it was to be done by hand or by some kind of mechanical electronic devices, calculators or so. Uh, but nowadays, as we discussed, a lot of new softwares are already available. So the tabulation work can be done with some kind of ease. We shall definitely be looking after these the very same thing in our own this workshop. Then after analyzing, there is hypothesis testing. So the hypothesis testing is there are two different types of these all these tests, or depending upon the data, there are two different types of tests. There are parametric test and non-parametric test. The parametric test includes students t-test. T-test is also of three different types. That is simple one sample t-test, two sample t-test, and paired t-test. So there are t-test. Then z-test is also available there, but only the difference is between is only difference between t-test and z-test is the difference of the sample size. In the z-test are being applied on large samples and t-test being applied on the small samples. But nowadays, nowadays as we do have different softwares available, so this differentiation between the large sample and small sample has been it is no more. And the f test is depending upon the variables. So when there are two different variables, we use p test. When there are three different variables or more than two variables, we use f test or ANOVA. Then there are non-parametric tests, parametric and non-parametric tests. Parametric tests are those tests which we generally use on normalized data, and non-parametric tests are which we generally use on unnormalized data, or where it is difficult for us to go for these parametric tests. That we shall be discussing in our workshop later on, about what are different parametric, non-parametric tests and how are they implemented or how are they executed. So there are two different tests, parametric and non-parametric tests. There are there are certain examples of hypothesis with us, like we have good or bad hypothesis, like plants will grow taller when given miracle grow. This is a good hypothesis, and plants will grow better when given miracle grow. So these are good and bad hypotheses. How hypotheses are being formulated. So what are different characteristics of a hypothesis? Depending upon it, we have formulated different hypotheses. Okay, so now let us see. Just a second. Okay, so these are the examples of certain hypotheses. Then once again, there is an example of cause and effect hypothesis. Like heat will cause the metal to expand. So heat is independent variable, and expansion in the metal is dependent variable. So the expansion, how much expansion has been done in different types of metals, which could have been the question of research. So the heat will cause metal to expand. This is one of the hypotheses. Then a cart full of bricks is harder to push than an empty cart. So full or empty, whether the cart is full or empty, this is the cause, and the effect is how hard it is to push. Similarly, a ball that is kicked with more force will fly farther. So the force of kick and the distance the ball used to travel, this is the cause and effect relationship. Then there is difference between parametric and non-parametric test. So basically the parametric test is where the specific assumptions made, like null hypothesis made on parameters of the population. Parameters are like average, arithmetic mean, standard deviation. These are the parameters, and null hypothesis is free from different kind of parameters in non-parametric test. Parametric tests are basically dependent upon the average and standard deviation kind of things. However, in non-parametric tests, what happens is it is more dependent upon mode rather than average. Since the sample, it may not every time represent the universe, and in non-parametric tests are also used on those places where if you are drawing different samples from the very same universe, you will find that these samples will give you a different result from the earlier sample group. So where there the sample is not appropriate, is not accurate, where there we use a non-parametric test. Then generalization of the concept that you have drawn and report preparation. So generalization and interpretation of the data and reporting as per the format. So format needs to be generally used for reporting of the research. All these formats are available with the universities. So one can refer to the university format or the journal format where you are actually submitting the research. So that is something like that specific format need to be followed. Then interpretation and there are different if we talk about interpretation, there are different techniques for interpretation of the data. Then researcher must it is not an easy job to interpret the data, and the researcher must give certain kind of reasonable explanations of the relations which he has find out, and he must interpret the lines of relationship in terms of underlying process. And one more thing, that the researcher must, if at least he must try to find out the thread of uniformity. What exactly is uniform? So he must try to find out the thread of uniformity that may lie under the surface in the relationship between two different variables. There could be an information which, if you are considering, in that case the results might have changed. So all these kind of things have to be interpreted properly. It has to be interpreted in the light of all the independent variables, all the affecting variables in general. In a very general sense, I am talking about. So these are basically the generalizations and report preparation. With this, we used to end our research process, but definitely there are certain problems which are being faced by the researchers in our country, and the problems generally are like lack of scientific training. However, definitely in our times, we are, I believe that we are fortunate enough that now we are in an age where all these research methodology workshops are readily available. COVID, no doubt, has definitely the negative implications on the life of people. We cannot compensate it, but definitely these kind of interactions between researchers and experts, even different experts, the different researchers, it is easier now as the online facilities are working like anything. So a scientific training was definitely one of the basic difficulties. Then insufficient interaction between industry and academia, between the industry and research organizations, between industry and universities where most of the research is being conducted. That difference is still there. I believe that in the new education policy, there are chances that these differences, these communication gaps might reduce a little bit, because they have planned for certain kind of internships from the industry. They have made compulsory these kind of research, these kind of interactions. Then there is a lack of existence of a specific kind of code of conduct for the researchers. That kind of code of conduct is also not available for the researchers in India right now. So people, even the very same type of, even nowadays, a lot of researchers are since the plagiarism, advanced plagiarism checking tools are available. Otherwise, in earlier times, the very same research was being produced at 2 or 3 different places for the award of degree or for the publication purposes. So this has also happened. So there are lots of difficulties, there are lots of problems earlier. So these are basically the problems which are faced by the researchers in India. Now, if anybody is having any kind of question from this presentation, I do hereby rest my presentation. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm thankful to the IoT Academy for giving me such an opportunity to present myself in front of you, to present my ideas in front of you in the form of this PowerPoint presentation. Thank you so much, everyone.
The session is open for discussion now. You can unmute and interact with the resource person, or you can post your questions in the chat box. You can unmute and interact with resource person. Thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Sir, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Raju Pullumaru. I'm an assistant professor at Usmania University PG College at Siddipet.
Sir.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Very good afternoon.
And yeah, my question is, as you said, to identify a problem, there can be professional experience.
Yes.
May I know any professional body which is into CIT? I am into management education. So may I know any professional body which is into research?
See, professional body will not be into research. Professional body will be there to for the purpose of interaction of the professionals. Like there are management associations, there are there are offices, like there are FICCI and right now we can for the purpose of drawing some kind of research problems, you can interact with the industry innovation cells. So these kind of things are basically over there. So bodies or professional bodies will be there for interaction between the professionals. And if some person wants to draw some kind of or if some person find out certain kind of problem, so those kind of meetings, those kind of like the bodies, they are there to help in finding out the research problem.
Fine, sir. Fine. Okay. So we need to have membership in those things, in those
Yes,
professional bodies.
either we need to have the memberships, or we can means definitely there would be certain kind of programs also that they generally use to organize. In that case also, you can go and join, and out of those problems as well, when there are different speakers are over there, out of their speeches you can take out certain kind of problems as well. Research problems can be taken out from there.
Fine, sir. Sir, my second question is,
Yeah.
How to identify a research problem for a PhD topic as such?
So there are two different things. So the very first thing is that first you identify a good research guide and you just ask directly, sir, what is the problem or on what topic should I work? So this is one of the simplest things, but definitely apart from the joke, what things is like first we need to identify the subject of your interest. Like there could be some person might be interested in like share market, some person might be interested in the finances, some person might feel interested in like the financial modeling or so. So out of these things, what happens is first we need to study the literature, the latest literature, and that also from best of the journal.
Fine,
If
sir.
if you want to find out a research problem, the broad problems can be find out with the help of studying the, like in ABDC journals. If you go and study the A category journals or A star category journals, you will find out that maximum researches over there, or the maximum research papers over there, are in the form of conceptual papers. You will find out some concepts over there. Then you can deduct those concepts into different research papers. You can find out more about more information about those research papers or those concepts, and then depending upon it, you can form your own questionnaire. You can collect data you can work upon it. That
Sir,
can be
I didn't get it, sir. A category of?
ABDC journals. There are ABDC journals.
Oh,
There are,
yeah, APDC.
yeah.
Okay, fine.
So that you can find out. Then in Scopus journals as well, the best of the Scopus journals, they generally discuss concepts rather than discussing more on data and interpretation, data interpretation. So you can
Fine.
get something from there.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Just now, Anamay talking.
Hello,
Yes.
sir. This is Assistant Professor Sonali here. I
Yeah.
just have one query. That
Mhm.
generally it is assumed that a research paper which is based on the primary data is qualitative, obviously because it has insight of primary collection. But sometimes secondary data is used for the research purpose, research paper presentation specifically. But it is also qualitative equally because a researcher is doing the analysis of various literature review, whatever is available with relevant content. So, what is generally your view on it?
Like I do not understand the question exactly. So if you
Sir,
can
it is
come
it
back.
is assumed that primary data research paper based on the primary data is qualitative, right? But
Okay.
in India specifically, a person if he is or she is presenting a research paper based on the secondary data, so it is not always considered as qualitative, or maybe it is always given a secondary preference rather than these things.
Like
So what is
maybe there is a small confusion between primary data and secondary data, or qualitative data, or qualitative research and quantitative research. Like quantitative research is one like where you are comparing the secondary data. That is in general, that is quantitative research. Okay, like when
hmm,
you are comparing the like what should I say? When you are comparing inflation with the exchange rate.
hmm,
So in that case, what is happening, that inflation data is already available and
correct,
exchange rate data is also available. And now if you are drawing out certain result out of your, and if you are drawing some relationship, if you are trying to find out the relationship between these economic indicators, in
correct,
that case, this is a quantitative research.
correct.
And if you are writing a research paper on experience of people on research gap, or like on like service gap,
Hmm, hmm,
the services provided by a bank branch and the consumer satisfaction, you
hmm,
are trying to find out the gap between these two, the gap analysis. That gap analysis will be a qualitative research.
correct, correct.
So this basically is the difference between qualitative research and quantitative research.
Okay. So if we are preparing paper on the secondary data, say for example,
That will
we
be a
are
quantitative research.
okay, okay. So that is also a qualitative and it is considered in peer review or any other journal, right?
No, it very first thing is a research paper. Whenever a research paper will be accepted in any of the journals, what happens is that paper shall be accepted on the basis of the theory that you have interpreted, interpretation
Correct,
of the
correct,
theory, presentation of the theory. So
hmm,
if even if the paper is based on historical data, even if the
correct,
paper is based on secondary data, the papers can be accepted in any of the journals subject to the level of theory that you have dealt with.
correct. Understood, sir. Thank you so much for the insight.
Ah,
Any more questions?
okay. So now I feel there are no more questions available, or there are no more questions left. Even if somebody is having any kind of question, like that my email ID is with you, you can ask the question from there as well. So I believe that now we should wind up the session.
Yes, sir, sure, sir. I think there are no more questions, sir. Shall we
No.
wind up?
Sure, sure.
On behalf of IoT Academy, I thank Dr. Sami sir for the very enriching and enlightening session, sir. And we thank you once again for the amazing presentation, your session on basics of research, will be very beneficial for the young researchers, sir. Thank you very much for your efforts, sir. I thank all the participants for joining the session today. Thank you all. Have a great day. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you so much.
Kindly submit the feedback form using the link that has been posted in the chat box. Thank you all.